Welcome to the ABA Journal Legal Rebels podcast, where we talk to men and women who are remaking the legal profession, changing the way the law is practiced, and setting standards that will guide us into the future. I'm Stephanie Francis Ward, a senior writer with the ABA Journal. Today I'm speaking with Monica Goyal, a visiting law professor at Canada's Osgoode Hall Law School, and she's also the founder of My Legal Briefcase and Alluvian Law. First, support for this podcast and the following message comes from Thomson Reuters Westlaw Edge and Answer One. Their virtual reception service is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to handle inbound calls, schedule appointments, and even respond to emails. Check them out at answerone.com/podcast for a special offer. Welcome to the show, Monica.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's my pleasure. I've been listening to some of the podcasts, and it's a great honor to be here with you today.
Oh, well, thank you so much. So you started your career as an engineer. Can you tell me about your career path and how being an engineer influenced you both to go to law school and what your role in developing platforms along the way, how that's been an influence on you as a work as an attorney and as an entrepreneur, starting businesses focused for lawyers and people who need legal services?
Yeah, so it's a long story.
I have time.
You have time? Good. I remember when I started at university, I actually started in math and then went into engineering, and it was kind of an accidental decision. I looked at the job board and I looked at what, at that time there was a lot of jobs. I was at this very technical school. And so there was a lot of jobs in computers and hardware and software. And so I said, this is where I should be. 17, 18-year-old self, that was how I made my decision. And I ended up being an engineer.
Mm-hmm. I think that's pretty smart. Yeah.
Yeah. So then when I finished engineering, I did electrical computer engineering in undergrad. And I graduated into a very hot market. So it was late 90s. So it was like the first internet bubble, dating myself here. And so I got a job fairly quickly when I graduated and found myself working in the tech industry. And it was a very exciting time to be working in tech. And I found that there was a lot of opportunities, and I found myself quickly kind of working with different startups and different companies. I used to design electronic chips. But I kind of felt like something was missing. So I'd always been a very social person, interested in human rights, interested in social issues, interested in history. And I went back to school to do my master's at Stanford University. And that was when I decided I didn't want to do engineering anymore. Ironically. Yeah.
So you have a master's in engineering from Stanford too?
Yes. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. And it was great. I love Stanford. It's a wonderful university. And at that time, and I think it's still the case, you're surrounded by all these really accomplished people and entrepreneurs and people innovating, just thinking way ahead of everybody else. So it was a fantastic experience, but I still felt like it wasn't me. And I took a few courses that were in law, some business courses, kind of as an opportunity to explore. And I really enjoyed the law courses. So I said, life is too short. I should be following what I'm really interested in. And that's how I ended up in law.
Huh. And can you tell me, how has your engineering background and your work in that field, how has it influenced your decisions in businesses to start in terms of services and products that people want to buy?
Yeah, well, when I got called to the bar in Ontario, before I got called, in Ontario we have this thing called articling, and it's a requirement that before you get called to the bar that you spend about a year apprenticing or practicing with a lawyer who's called to the bar. And so I had practiced in intellectual property and in a fairly big firm. And the thing that I found, fairly quickly, fairly early on, was how different it was from my experience working as an engineer. And one of the things that I found is, like, in engineering companies, there's really a ethos about, constant improvement, continuous improvement. How do you manage tasks? People really think about that, systematizing, thinking about how you do what you're doing on a daily basis, and trying to automate or trying to think about ways to make it simpler, make it more efficient. So that was so different when I went into the law firm, and it was for me, I was thinking, this is a source of cost for the client. And I thought, this is, if we can improve some of these processes, how we do stuff in the firm, that could mean less cost for the client and maybe affordable legal services. So I went into law, and I was really interested in access to justice. And so when I got called, I started my legal briefcase, and the thought behind that, or kind of the impetus about that, is that can we rethink how we're doing legal and deliver legal services in a more cost-effective way to the public. And so, for example, my legal briefcase, the first instance of it was a small claims court solution. So the small claims court amount in Ontario is $25,000. So that's pretty high. Like, I think in the U.S. that would be, that would be considered quite high for small claims. And it is a court where a lot of people were self-representing themselves. So I said, can I develop this solution so people could go to the court, have a little bit more knowledge in doing that, and do this in an automated way? So that's how we started the My Legal Briefcase, and how kind of I ended up combining these two areas in practice.
And I have the impression in Canada that a paralegal can represent a party in small claims court. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. It's was a change made not too long ago. It's been maybe 5 years.
And I guess what I find fascinating about that is, in the States, sometimes that's discussed and some states are experimenting with it. But it sounds like even if you have a situation where you can have a paralegal instead of an attorney for a lower cost in small claims court, people still, the better choice for them might be software, like My Legal Briefcase. Am I hearing that correct? And I'm assuming if I am, it has to do with costs.
Yes. What I found actually is that a lot of people, they will go and they will do it themselves. Even a paralegal can be too expensive for them. And the system, the small claims court, they've done a really good job of making it accessible. So they designed it here so that it's, there's forms. They're meant to be more easily fillable for the general public. So I think that it was already a system that was pretty accessible to people. And so even when you have the paralegals introduced and they're able to offer the services, it meets a certain need in the market, but there was still a lot of people who feel comfortable enough to do it themselves.
I see. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I am going to just ask Monica if she thinks that sometimes there's a disconnect between attorneys and the technology that's available to help them practice law. We'll be right back.
Is your firm experiencing missed calls, empty voicemail boxes, and potential clients you'll never hear from again? Enter Answer One Virtual Receptionist. They're more than just an answering service. Answer One's available 24/7. They can even schedule appointments, respond to emails, integrate with Clio, and much more. Answer One helps make sure your clients have the experience they deserve. Give them a call at 800-ANSWER1 or visit them at answer1.com/podcast for a special offer.
The Insights from the Edge podcast series brings you the latest legal trends as Insight attorneys sit down with industry experts. Stay informed on the latest topics, including our latest episode on the importance of adopting technology early and some of the big milestones in legal technology that change the way legal researchers do their work. Check out this episode and more on The Legal Current from Thomson Reuters.
And we're back. I'm Stephanie Francis Ward, and on today's episode of the ABA Journal's Legal Rebels Trailblazers, I'm speaking with Monica Goyal, a lawyer and an entrepreneur who has a background in engineering. Monica, you were mentioning how people were using software you developed in small claims court before we went to break, and I wanted to ask you about lawyers and the technology that's available in terms of maybe making their tasks easier or perhaps finding a way to cut costs for clients. Do you find that in the practice of law, there's a fair amount of attorneys who are resistant to using some of the products out there that can save money both for the firms and clients as well?
Short answer is yes.
Okay.
And if you develop software, legal tech software, and I talk to a number of entrepreneurs, and I hear routinely the same thing, that lawyers are resistant to adopting new technology. And so that trickles down into the practice of law as well. And I see this as well in my own practice. I have a practice, and in my own practice, I've seen this where even young lawyers, so we think young lawyers, they're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, that they're used to using a computer, that they're somehow going to be more willing to try and experiment with new technologies. And I found that that's not the case. And one of the things that I do at the law school is I teach a course to law students about using digital technology in the practice of law. So I give them ideas about what are the tools that are out there and how they could then implement that in their practices in the future.
Ah, I see. And from your career experience, what can lawyers learn from how engineering teams work together on projects?
I think a lot. And one of the things, when I was designing the course for Osgood Hall around using digital technology in the practice of law, I spoke to a number of senior members of the bar in big law firms, small law firms, knowledge management. And I asked them, what do you think law students need to know about technology? And my focus was around technology. But interestingly, a number of people said to me that law students need to understand how to work in a team. And so I'm starting the conversation around technology, and a number of people are saying that this is what we see law students need to be able to do. So in the practice of law, nowadays, you do have to understand how to work with a number of different people effectively. And that is something that engineering teams do really well at. And that is something that law students or lawyers could be, looking at to see how do they work in those teams, how do they deliver a project. And some of those concepts we're seeing being introduced into the practice of law. So, for example, legal project management. That's a growing area that's, arisen in the last, 10 years. So continuous improvement. Those ideas are coming into the practice of law now, too.
Okay. And Monica, I wanted to jump back to another engineering background question for you. It's so hard for so many recent law school graduates to find work oftentimes today, but there's also a sense that if you have an engineering background with the degree and practice experience working as an engineer, you might have a lot of great job opportunities, and it's not as competitive about where you went to law school to find a job. What advice would you have for someone who is working as an engineer and is interested in law school?
Mm-hmm. Great question, Stephanie. And I would say, actually, even if you have a real interest in some of the topics that I mentioned, like legal project management or technology or design thinking, or just thinking about how to reinvent the practice and delivery of law, there is opportunity for those students. And so in my classes, I see a number of law students who don't have engineering degrees, who are really interested in the topic and the area. They build up a resume around it, and they're finding opportunities, different types of opportunities in companies. Like there are legal technology companies now who are looking for people who have a domain expertise in law, as well as some insight about thinking about design and technology and stuff. And then also in firms and in-house counsel positions where they're looking for recent graduates with that kind of expertise. So I would say that it's not just limited to people with engineering degrees. I encourage everybody who has an interest and passion in the area to kind of build up the resume and take courses and learn about the new opportunities that are available.
All right. And that's everything we have time for today, Monica. Thank you so much for your time. It was wonderful having you as a guest.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I really enjoyed it.
And listeners, thank you too for joining us. If you like what you heard today, please rate us an Apple Podcast. We'll see you next time for another episode of the ABA Journal's Legal Rebels Trailblazer podcast series. If you'd like more information about today's show, please visit LegalRebels.com, LegalTalkNetwork.com, subscribe via iTunes and RSS, find both the ABA Journal and Legal Talk Network on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, or download the free apps from ABA Journal and Legal Talk Network in Google Play and iTunes. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by, Legal Talk Network, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer.